Night had settled over New York City, the skyline shimmering against the vast glass windows of a luxurious penthouse. Nathan Sterling, a powerful real estate tycoon, lounged in his leather chair, swirling a glass of red wine in his hand. To the outside world, he was a man of prestige and influence. But to Emma, his wife, he was cold and distant. Emma stood near the fireplace, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. She had kept this secret for days, fearing his reaction. But tonight, she could no longer hold it in. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her courage. Impregnant. Nathan froze, his sharp eyes narrowing. A brief silence filled the room before a smirk curled on his lips. Really? Nathan scoffed, but there was a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Hesitation, or perhaps fear. He swirled the wine in his glass, masking whatever emotions threatened to surface. You expect me to believe this is my child? Or is this just another desperate attempt to secure your place in my life? Emma felt her heart tighten painfully. She tried to speak, to explain, but Nathan wasn't listening. He stood up, pulled out a checkbook, scribbled a number, and placed it on the table. Take this and leave. You'll never have to worry about money again. Emma stared at the check, her vision blurred by tears. But she didn't want his money. She wanted a family. Without another word, she turned around and walked out of the penthouse, stepping into the freezing night, carrying both her unborn child and a broken heart. The cold New York wind cut through Emma's thin coat, biting into her skin as deeply as the pain in her heart. The towering skyscrapers, the flashing neon signs, the hurried pedestrians, all moved around her as if she didn't exist. She hugged herself tightly, her breath coming out in shaky gasps. The city buzzed around her, indifferent to her pain. With every step, exhaustion crept deeper into her bones, and for a fleeting moment, she wondered, what if she just stopped? Stopped walking, stopped fighting, stopped everything. Would anyone even notice? The neon lights flickered, the city moved on without her, just as Nathan had. A lump rose in her throat as she thought about her family, miles away, their disapproving words still echoing in her mind. You chose this life, Emma, now live with it. She had no one to turn to, no place to go. After hours of wandering aimlessly, her aching legs forced her to stop at Grand Central Terminal. She sank onto a cold metal bench, trying to steady her breath. But the hunger gnawing at her stomach reminded her she wasn't just caring for herself anymore. She had a child to protect. She had to leave this city. New York had given her nothing but pain. Through the fog of exhaustion, one name surfaced in her mind. Rachel, her old college friend who now lived in Chicago. It was her only option. Emma made her way to the Port Authority bus terminal, stepping up to the ticket counter. Ticket to Chicago, please. That'll be $120, the clerk said without looking up. Emma reached into her bag, her heart sinking as she realized she had nothing but a few crumpled bills. Desperation clawed at her chest, swallowing her pride. She turned to a well-dressed woman nearby. Excuse me, I'm in a really bad situation. I need to get to Chicago, and I don't have enough money. If you could just spare... The woman averted her gaze and walked away quickly. Emma tried again, a businessman in a sleek suit, a young couple holding hands, but each rejection stung like a fresh wound. She was about to give up when a voice spoke behind her. Chicago, huh? I grew up there. Turning, she saw a middle-aged man with kind eyes. Without another word, he pulled $120 from his wallet and handed it to her. I've been where you are. Just promise me that one day you'll help someone else in need. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, I promised. Thank you so much. As the bus pulled away, Emma watched the city shrink in the distance, carrying with her nothing but a fragile glimmer of hope. The overnight bus ride carried Emma further from her painful past. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, the bus finally rolled into Chicago, a city unfamiliar, yet somehow less suffocating than New York. Stepping off the bus with nothing but a small bag and a heart full of uncertainty, Emma clutched onto the last thing she had, Rachel's address, scribbled on the back of an old Christmas card. She had no phone to call ahead, no way to know if Rachel even still lived there. Her only option was to show up and hope. The apartment complex sat in a quiet neighborhood. Taking a shaky breath, Emma knocked on the door. A few moments later, it swung open. Rachel stood there, eyes wide in shock. "Emma? Oh my God, what are you doing here?" Hearing her friend's voice, Emma's composure crumbled. Tears welled up as she choked out, "I didn't know where else to go, Rachel. Without hesitation, Rachel pulled her into a tight hug. The apartment was small but cozy, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and shelves lined with books. Rachel handed Emma a warm cup of tea and listened as she recounted everything: how Nathan had thrown her out, how she wandered the streets, and how she made her way to Chicago. Rachel squeezed her hand firmly, her voice unwavering. "You're not alone, Emma. You can stay here as long as you need. We'll figure things out together." A weight lifted from Emma's chest. For the first time in days, she felt like she wasn't completely lost. But she knew that if she wanted to provide for her child, she had to find a job and rebuild her life from scratch. In the days that followed, Emma slowly adjusted to her new life in Chicago. Rachel's kindness gave her a place to stay, but Emma knew she couldn't rely on her friend forever. She needed a job, not just to survive, but to prepare for the arrival of her child. She walked across the city, filling out applications at cafes, stores, and restaurants, only to be rejected at every turn. No work experience, no degree, no real skills. It felt hopeless. One late afternoon, after another exhausting day of job hunting, she noticed a help wanted sign in the window of a small diner in River North. Desperate, she stepped inside. The owner, a middle-aged woman named Margaret, eyed her skeptically. "Do you have any experience working in a restaurant?" Emma shook her head. "No, but I'm a fast learner. I really need this job." Margaret sighed, hesitated for a moment, then handed her an apron. "Morning shift, 6 a.m. to noon. Don't be late." Emma nearly burst into tears from relief. The days that followed were grueling. She woke up before dawn, served customers, scrubbed tables, washed dishes. It was exhausting, but every dollar she earned was a step closer to securing a future for her baby. A month later, Emma gave birth to a baby boy and named him Lucas. Holding him in her arms, she whispered, "I promise you will never feel abandoned." She knew she needed a better future, and to do that, she had to keep moving forward. Years passed, and Lucas grew up surrounded by his mother's unwavering love and sacrifice. Though Emma worked tirelessly, she never let her son feel alone. She juggled 2 jobs, mornings at a pediatric clinic, evenings picking up extra shifts at the diner whenever she could. No matter how exhausted she was, she always showed up for Lucas, his first day of school, his performances, the nights he needed comfort after a rough day. Lucas was not only intelligent, but also kind-hearted. He understood how much his mother had given up to provide for him. As he grew older, he set his sights on Columbia University, one of the most prestigious schools in New York. The day he received his acceptance letter, he ran home, beaming with excitement. "Mom, I got into Columbia!" Emma felt a surge of pride and unease. New York, the city that had broken her, the place she had left behind with a shattered heart. But she knew this was the best opportunity for her son. "I'm so proud of you, Lucas. Go chase your dreams." A few months later, Lucas arrived in New York, ready to embrace the future, unaware that the city held a past he had yet to uncover. Lucas embraced his new life in New York, but one thing kept pulling at his thoughts: Sterling Enterprises, a name that seemed to be everywhere, on buildings, advertisements, and news articles. One afternoon, as he walked past the company's headquarters, he stopped, staring up at the towering structure. He knew this was the empire built by Nathan Sterling, a man his mother rarely spoke about, yet Lucas always knew the truth. Curiosity burned inside him, but so did resentment. For years he had told himself he didn't care, that Nathan Sterling was nothing more than a name on a business magazine. But if that were true, why was his heart pounding? Why did he feel like a child again? Desperate for an answer, for acknowledgement, for something his father never gave him. But standing here, in front of the empire his father had built, something inside him snapped. He had spent his whole life wondering why, and now he needed an answer. He walked straight to the reception desk, his heart pounding. "I want to see Nathan Sterling." The receptionist eyed him skeptically. "Mr. Sterling doesn't take walk-ins." Lucas took a steady breath. "Tell him I'm his son." Minutes later, he was escorted to the top floor. As the office doors opened, Nathan Sterling, now older, streaks of gray in his hair, looked up from his desk. A long silence stretched between them. Nathan's sharp eyes scanned him. "Who are you?" Lucas clenched his fists. "My name is Lucas, and I'm your son." Nathan leaned back, crossing his arms. "Did Emma send you here to ask for something?" Anger flared in Lucas. "My mother never asked for anything from you. She raised me on her own. I just want one answer. Why did you abandon us?" Nathan didn't speak. But in his gaze, for the first time, Lucas saw something unexpected. Hesitation. As Lucas left the office, he had no idea that this meeting had planted something deep within Nathan. Regret. And for the first time in years, Nathan began to reflect on the mistakes he had made. Nathan Sterling sat alone in his vast office, the city lights reflecting off the glass behind him. His encounter with Lucas had stirred memories he had buried for 2 decades. He saw Emma in his mind, the strong yet vulnerable woman he had cast aside, and now their son had grown up, not seeking money or status, but demanding the truth. For the first time in his life, Nathan sat alone in his penthouse and felt the crushing weight of regret. His empire was still standing, his fortune untouched, but his life? Empty. The lavish furniture, the priceless artwork, the panoramic view of the city, none of it mattered, not when he had lost the only 2 people who had ever truly meant something. 3 weeks later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Emma heard a knock at her door. When she opened it, she froze. Nathan stood there, his once dark hair now streaked with silver, his eyes lacking the arrogance they once held. "I didn't think you'd ever want to see me," Nathan admitted, his voice softer than she remembered. "But I needed to say this." Emma crossed her arms, keeping her distance. "Then, say it." Nathan took a deep breath. "I was wrong. Everything I did, to you, to Lucas, was a terrible mistake. I was scared, selfish. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to do the right thing, even if it's too late." Emma studied him, not with anger, but with something closer to surprise. "Does Lucas know you're here?" "No," Nathan shook his head, "but I want to see him. I want to be his father if he'll let me." Emma was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "That's up to him." When Lucas came home and saw Nathan standing in the living room, he didn't know how to react. But for the first time, his father wasn't just a shadow from the past. He was a man trying to make things right. And maybe that was a start. Lucas stood face to face with Nathan, uncertainty evident in his expression. He had imagined this moment hundreds of times, but never like this. His father, standing here, not as a distant, indifferent businessman, but as a man seeking redemption. Emma watched quietly from the corner of the room. She knew this moment wasn't hers to control. It was up to Lucas. After a long silence, Lucas took a deep breath. "Why now?" he asked, his voice no longer filled with anger. Nathan met his gaze, regret clouding his features. "Because now, I finally have the courage to face what I did." Lucas didn't respond right away. He looked at his mother, the one who had always been there, the one who had never abandoned him, and he realized something. His mother had always been enough. But maybe forgiveness wasn't for Nathan. Maybe it was for himself. "I don't know if we can ever really be a family," Lucas said slowly, "but I think I can give you a chance." Relief washed over Nathan. Emma smiled softly, not because she needed Nathan back in her life, but because she saw that Lucas was making his own choice. With time, Nathan became a presence in Lucas's life. They couldn't rewrite the past, but they could start from here. And for the first time in 20 years, Emma, Lucas, and Nathan sat together at the dinner table. Not a perfect family, but a family in their own way. One quiet evening, Lucas was helping his mother clean out an old cabinet. when he stumbled upon a small wooden box hidden inside. Curious, he opened it. Inside were faded photographs, small keepsakes, and a yellowed envelope. The sender's name, Nathan Sterling. Frowning, Lucas picked up the letter and walked into the living room, where Nathan and Emma were sitting, sipping tea. "Dad, what is this?" Lucas asked, holding up the envelope. Nathan's expression shifted the moment he saw it. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face before he sighed and took the envelope from his son. "It's a letter I wrote a long time ago, but never had the courage to give your mother." Emma raised an eyebrow. "When did you write it?" Nathan pulled out the slightly crumpled paper, his voice lowering as he read the words he had written years ago. "Emma, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe I'll never have the courage to give it to you, but there's something I need to say. I'm sorry. The day you left, I convinced myself it was for the best, that I wasn't ready to be a father, that you and our son would be fine without me. But the truth is, not a single day has passed where I haven't thought about you and our child. I saw him in the news when he got into Colombia. He has your eyes, determined, strong. I wonder how he grew up, if he ever thought about me, if he hates me. I don't expect forgiveness, but if you ever get the chance, tell him I never forgot him." Nathan. Emma was silent, her eyes filled with unspoken emotions. Lucas looked at his father and asked, "So why didn't you ever send it?" Nathan shook his head, letting out a small chuckle. "I was too proud, too afraid to face the truth, to face the fact that I might have lost both of you forever." Lucas thought for a moment before smiling slightly. "But in the end, you found us again." Nathan turned to Emma. She gave him a knowing look and reached for his hand, not with anger, but with quiet acceptance. Lucas placed the letter back into the box with care. "You don't have to regret the past anymore, Dad. What matters is that we're here now, together." Nathan took a deep breath, then smiled. "You're right, and I won't ever let this family go again."